How's everyone doing? Kind of good, like okay-ish. It's been a long day, hasn't it? I would say let's try again, but I don't think I'm going to get a different result. So my name is Ariel, and I am the CEO and co-founder of AppFigures. Who here knows AppFigures, uses AppFigures? Okay, a decent chunk. For those of you who don't, hopefully by the end you'll be like, I need this, I must. But it's not about AppFigures this talk. This talk is about a few things. It's about what is App Store optimization. You probably heard the word, you probably saw some videos about it. Maybe you saw an Eastern European guy tell you have to do it, and you're like, I don't know, we'll see. It's also about the 4 components of App Store optimization, because once you see what it is, you're going to want to do it. And then we're going to talk about the actual bits and pieces of doing it and how you can turn your current App Store page and your current App Store presence, if you have an app on the store, into more downloads. I can't really guarantee results, but I can almost guarantee results because I've done this so many times. And I know that it can work. But before we even get into App Store optimization, how many of you have shipped an app to the store? Okay, almost everyone. How many of you are thinking of shipping an app to the store? Okay, more people. So a lot of apps are going to come to the store. And you're kind of focusing on shipping, you're like, I just need to finish. I just need to get it done. I'm going to put it in the App Store, and life is going to be great. But a lot of other people are doing the same thing. So if you can see that little number, it says 1.7 something something, 1.8 million apps are on the App Store. And this shouldn't be a foreign figure. This is something you probably saw or heard about or kind of figured happened in general. But something more interesting is there are more than 1,000 apps that are being released to the store every day. These are not apps that are being sent to Apple for review. These are apps that are making it into the store. So people are reviewing them, and they're becoming available. So every day there are 1,000 more apps that are competing with yours. They're not necessarily competing with yours on functionality or on features or anything like that, but they're competing with yours on placement, and they're taking attention away from your app. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So your app is in the store, but how are people going to find it? How do people find apps on the App Store? 1, what does this say? Oh, they see it on the Today screen of the App Store. I've seen a bunch of apps on the Today screen. I downloaded a bunch of apps from the Today screen. But I wouldn't count on it for my app to get downloaded, especially if we're thinking we want consistent downloads over time. So if you get featured, and you can get featured, well, it could happen. You're not going to be on that page for more than 7 days. And after that, it's going to drop. So don't count on it for consistent growth of downloads. Someone could actually go into the category, which is becoming more and more hidden with every day, and scroll through and say, wow, this app is so awesome. I know nothing about it, but I'm going to download it and tap on it. Nope, not going to happen. Or they can go into search and type exactly what they want to do. Not your app's name, not your company name, not anything like that. They're going to type the most basic of what they think they should do. Maybe it'll get auto-completed to something that actually makes sense. Otherwise, there's going to be a keyword or two. And bingo, that's how most people do it. I believe the number from Apple is more than 82% of searches or of downloads start with a search. So if someone is on the App Store, they find your app by searching for it. So you need ASM, because that search is what we're going to be optimizing for. Now, show of hands, how many of you have optimized your App Store page at all? We got 1. 2? Do I see a 2? Okay, 2. We're getting there. 3? Not even 3 people. Okay. Good you came to this talk. So you definitely need ASO, because if you're not doing this, your competitors are doing this. Even worse, apps that are not competing with you are doing this, and they're taking your spot. So when people look for whatever your app does, they can't find you. And they probably can't even find a good app that does it, because you're not doing any sort of optimization. So what is App Store optimization? And this slide I came up with before coming to this conference, just for the record. So App Store optimization is a few things, and the first is kind of a set of questions to help you understand which keywords and which search terms are actually relevant for your app, are actually useful for you to get found, and are the ones that you need to use in order to get more impressions on the App Store. It's also a way to use those keywords and those search terms to indicate to Apple that you need to be ranked for those keywords. And that's kind of the important part. I know we talk about algorithms all the time, and there was just a good talk by Joe, who's here in the back, I think. I see Joe in the back, about algorithms. And ASO is really, in part, an algorithm problem. If we can figure out what Apple does to display apps in search results, we can actually optimize our app to show up where they need to show up. And I'm going to be talking about that today. And it's also a good amount of best practices or guidelines for how to take all the information that is on the page that is kind of representing your app and turn it into something that people understand and understand what the app does. Because just if you put up a screenshot of your app, it doesn't really mean that it sells the app. It doesn't mean that someone who needs the app looks at the screenshot and goes, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Download. Most likely it's like, what the hell's going on here? Next. And next is something that happens all the time, and it's really bad for your app and for your downloads. And lastly, it's a mindset. It's a mindset that you can use to try new things and not figure that if you do it wrong, everything is going to go really, really bad. It might, but it probably won't. And by experimenting, you're learning and improving. So you have to think about it in that sort of way. We're all developers, so experimentation is probably not foreign to any of us. It should be pretty normal and pretty standard. But you have to bring it into App Store optimization, which sounds like, oh, it's just marketing. But it isn't. Now, what App Store optimization isn't is a slide that I came up with today after hearing objections from people here yesterday and today who told me why they don't do ASO or why they haven't looked at ASO. And I'm going to go between App Store optimization and ASO. I kind of use them the same way, but they are the same way, just an acronym. So one, and I heard this from people here over the last 24 hours, is that App Store optimization is illegal. It's a way to spam the App Store. What? It's a way to trick the algorithm to get your app to the top. None of this is true. Nothing is illegal. Apple actually has some guidelines on how to actually use keywords in your app name and your subtitle. So all this is stuff you should do. An interesting one. ASO is annoying. I heard that from a real person. And it's a waste of time. And as much as I like Swift UI, and I do like Swift UI, what's more important is first making money with your app, and then using that money to spend time on R&D with new things. And if you're thinking about using Swift UI immediately, you probably shouldn't, but that's for a different talk for a different person. But really, the one objection that I hear all the time, and from people who are building really amazing apps, is that they don't have the time, they don't have the know-how, and they don't have the money to use an agency. You don't need to use an agency. You could, but you don't have to. You don't have to spend a lot of time. You could, but you don't have to. And you don't have to be a really full-time expert to actually do some of these things. So, almost. But really, at the end of the day, if you think about all of this, it's just not something you can ignore. You can spend just a tiny bit of time doing it. You can iterate once. You don't have to do more than that. You have to do a little bit of research. And in the grand scheme of things, as long as you don't ignore it, you'll probably be fine. And you'll probably see that increase in downloads and hopefully revenue. So I said this before, and I'll say it again. ASO isn't just about marketing. People will have this concept of marketing being this nebulous idea, and things happen in marketing, and people say words, and people wear suits. And maybe that happens in marketing, but marketing is just a collection of things you do to make sure that people know that your app exists. And App Store optimization, like I was saying before, is really about thinking about the algorithm. So it's more of a technical problem if you think about it that way. Now, I'll put a pin in this for a quick second, and we'll get back to the algorithm and what it means and what it does. And we'll go and talk about the 4 components of ASO. And this is kind of my own interpretation, but at the same time, these are the basic components that make up how you would go about optimizing. And these are the ones we're going to explore. So the first thing that I start with when it comes to ASO is I do research. I try to figure out what is the app doing and then translate that into search terms. So at the lab that I held yesterday, we looked at a few apps. Some had to do with golf and swings. Some had to do with music and rhythm. Some had to do with fitness and things of that nature. And the first thing that I tried to attack was understand how would people think about, what is this going to give me as a user? And step number one is to find all these types of terms that are relevant to my app, that will bring people in, and then also give me the most chance of converting them into a download. And we'll talk about how that is done in a second. The next bit is now that you know which keywords and which terms people are looking for, taking them and turning them into something that Apple would understand. And you can do the same thing for Google. I'm going to focus on Apple for this particular talk, but it works kind of the same way. And then next, once people get to your page, how do you craft your visuals in a way that will show them what the app is doing really, really quickly? Because we know attention spans are really tiny these days. And really get them excited about hitting that get button, because that's really what we want. Whether your app is paid or free, the get button is the entry point to pretty much everything. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about monitoring, which is a critical part of App Store optimization that a lot of people forget about. A lot of people just do 1, 2, and 3 and forget to look, just hope that it will work. And it may, but it probably won't. So you have to keep an eye on it. And we'll talk about how to do that and what are the most important metrics they have to keep an eye on. So we'll start with research. How to research for ASO is a question that I don't normally get because people completely eliminate this step in their process. Everyone asks me, where do I put my keywords? How do I get my keywords into my name? But what are your keywords to begin with? And so when I start is what I was saying before. I'm looking for all the features, all the benefits, all the why should I get this app? Because if you think about it from a user standpoint, they're not looking for your app. They're looking for an app to complete a task. Whatever that task is, we need to understand and we need to translate our keywords into whatever they're searching for. So if you have an app that allows you to track your caffeine intake, that is going to be different from an app that helps you with something else that had to do with fitness or with a healthy body. And so when you think about it that way, you get to a point where you can enumerate all the keywords that you can think of, all the search terms that you think will lead people into your app. Now, an interesting thing is that it's so easy to go after competitors and say, what are they doing? And that's something you should do. You know your competitors in most cases. And when you look at them, you can get some ideas. Now, just keep in mind, they probably have as much of an idea of what they're doing with their ASO as you. So don't necessarily take everything they do and say, because they do it, I have to do it. But it's a great way to get ideas and get some more understanding of what I should be looking at. But, and here's a caveat, once you start getting those keywords, you'll notice that when you search for them on the App Store, the apps that show up aren't necessarily your competitors. So if you have your 4 or 5 competitors that you're always looking at, and you go into a keyword that you think is really relevant for you, they may not show up. They probably are, but there are some keywords that they just probably don't optimize for. Now, the real challenge here is those apps that do show up, even if they have nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your popularity, they're still going to be the ones that are your real competitors. I call them your search competitors because they're the ones you have to beat. So it's their performance you have to outdo. And this happens to us all the time. If you have the App Figures app, you know that there's analytics in the name and that we do analytics. And so when we optimize our app, it's all about app analytics and mobile analytics, App Store analytics. Those are all the keywords that we really focus on. But analytics on the App Store is somehow, by magic, associated with Instagram. So if you just look for analytics, you'll find a bunch of Instagram apps. You'll find apps that allow you to get more followers, that let you see who blocked you. All these things have nothing to do with us. We have no relationship to Instagram, but they are our competitors. So if they're getting a significant amount of downloads more than us, we're kind of in trouble. And we have to get really clever about it. So that's super important. Know who those search competitors are. And that's a part of research. And then this is a part that a lot of people really forget, is you got to figure out if the keywords you're thinking about, the keywords you think users will look for, are actually being used in the App Store. So at the lab yesterday, we looked at a bunch of keywords, and for every app that we looked at, the initial set of keywords the developer was thinking would be the right keywords all had such low popularity. Popularity is a metric between 1 and 100, where 100 means everyone is looking for it, and 1 means no one cares. And most of the keywords that we were looking at that we thought would be so great had a popularity of 5. 5 is nothing. No one cares about that keyword. You can optimize and you can own that keyword. You can be number 1 for that keyword, but you're not going to get anything out of it. So what you have to do is once you have those keywords, you have to look at their popularity and rank them. Now, it's possible that your app is so niche, so focused, so targeted that all the keywords are going to be 5s. Unlikely. Very unlikely. Even yesterday at the lab, we had someone like that. But even in that particular niche, we were able to find keywords that are just slightly bit better. We got to the 19s, the 20s, the 25s. But it's important that you actually go through all of them and do that sort of research. Because again, if you're optimizing for a keyword that's a very low popularity keyword, even if you win and you're the best, no one's going to see it. So you really gained nothing. You just wasted time. And then next, also extremely important, is you have to go beyond just the popularity, because let's say that my app is in the fitness category and all the keywords around fitness are extremely popular. That's one of the most popular search terms on the App Store. The one problem that I would have is my app may not necessarily have the right performance to be able to get into those top results. And so if I know that the top results, I know how many downloads they're getting estimated, I know what their ranks are like, and I know how the ratings work. All of these components are what we reverse engineered out of the Apple search algorithm. Then I can create a benchmark that will tell me if I can actually make it or not. And I have examples for this. So this is an example of popularity. I looked at just a few keywords that I could come up with for Reminders app. If you have a Reminders app, you may think, I'll optimize for Reminders app, or Reminder app, or Reminder widget. Widget sounds like a great idea. Why would I want to go into an app to remind me stuff when I could just have a widget? Nope. No one looks for widgets. No one cares. Now, I couldn't have known this just out of intuition because it kind of makes sense to me. But then the more interesting part is Reminder versus Reminders. I would not think of Reminder app as something people look for more than Reminders app, because I have more than one reminder. I have quite a few. And so by looking at this data, now I know that I shouldn't really optimize for Reminders app. I should optimize for Reminder app. The plural addition is less of a problem in real life, but that was a good example. Next is we have to look at that data of the performance data. And so this is an interesting keyword that I looked at, I worked on with a friend for flight tracker. So someone that I know just released an app for flight tracking about a month ago, and he was asking me, what should I go for? And I said, let's look at the data. So we looked through all the keywords that make sense. And flight tracker came up as a popularity of 60, which is pretty high. And then we looked at the top results, and we saw that on average, they're getting 40-ish, 50-ish thousand downloads. Look at their rank, top 100, and look at their ratings in the 5 digits. And so we knew that if we don't get more than 40,000 downloads in a month, this is all estimated in the US, and we can't break the top 100 in that category, we're probably not going to get into the top 3. He's not there yet. He's at about number 7, I believe, for now. But now that we have this idea, we were able to go deeper and say, okay, can I make it into the top 10? And the idea behind that is if you can make it to a high enough place, then you know that slowly you can grow from there as you get more downloads, as you're getting found. And so this is incredibly important. A lot of people don't do this. And what ends up happening is they go for those extremely popular keywords, where they're probably fighting off Facebook and Instagram. And there's just no way they'll get it to a point where they're actually, the rank is useful. And so what you're going to get out of it is you'll rank 30th for a popularity 60 keyword. No one's going to really swipe 30 apps to get to that. It's just impossible. I tried, actually. It's really boring. So that is why you do research, and that is how you end up with the right terms that give you where you should be optimizing for. Research mistakes. Not learning from competitors. I said that competitors are important and you have to look at them because they might do something or try something that you haven't thought of. Always look at them. We talked about optimizing for keywords with low popularity and how that can really impact your overall number of downloads. Especially if you're changing something that works, that can be really disastrous. We talked about using keywords that are irrelevant. We didn't. So I'll mention that when you find your keywords, sometimes it would be kind of a good idea, or you think it might be a good idea, to stray a little bit. So take a feature that you may not have, but might be, you think, kind of relevant to someone who's downloading the app or related. The problem with that is, even if you rank really high for that keyword, when someone actually gets to your App Store page and they see that you're not doing what they need, they'll just disappear completely. And so you just wasted an opportunity instead of optimizing for something that could have been useful for you. We talked about optimizing for keywords that aren't reachable. Their performance is just too high. And it's okay. In the App Store, there are a lot of levels, and especially when you're starting out, or if your app, it's not your full-time app, you haven't done any sort of optimization, you just may not have the downloads. So what you have to do is just iterate again and again until you get to a point where you have the right amount of downloads. Now, once you get those keywords, and once you know what to do with them, or you don't know what to do with them, once you know which keywords are actually the right keywords, there are a few places that we can use to indicate to Apple, these are the keywords that my app is really useful for. Now, Apple limits all of these, so you can't do everything. You can't just copy and paste a Word document into this. Be like, I'm going to rank for everything, which is great, because that allows you to be really concise, and that's the opposite of spamming. That's exactly how you get to a point, and Apple gets to a point where things remain relevant. So you have the keyword list in App Store Connect. I'm sure you've seen this before. That text box that no one knows what to do with. And the tooltip is really not helpful, for the record. You have the app's name, which is what everyone sees, but also what Apple really puts a lot of emphasis on when they try to figure out where to rank you. And then you have the subtitle, something that is unfortunately not used as much as it should be. So your keyword list, and I talk about this all the time because if you remember from the previous slide, the keyword list is the most important place to put your keywords in. And that's also why sometimes when you search on the App Store and you see apps that don't mention a specific keyword, the keyword you're looking for at all, and you're kind of wondering, why are they even here? It's because they optimize their keyword list to go after that keyword. So it's so powerful, it doesn't even have to be visible on the App Store. So we'll start with that. Now, remember I said that it's an algorithm problem more so than a marketing problem? This is where it comes in handy. So if we can figure out what the algorithm does to figure out who's first, who's second, and who even shows up for a keyword, we can use those keywords from the research stage to indicate to Apple exactly where we want to be and where we need to be. Providing we have the right performance, that would just work, and it does. And so there are a few things to do when it comes to optimizing that list that if you think about the algorithm behind it, which uses a kind of a variation of full text search. How many of you have worked with full text search? Lucene, Elasticsearch, that old one in MySQL? Okay. So you know approximately how it works. I'll give you the quick gist. The idea behind the full text search is that it doesn't just match on strings. What it does is it tries to be smart. So it can handle pluralization automatically. It can handle combinations of keywords as it sees them and does the matching for you. And it does a little bit more than that. And so that text box that you think just needs to have the search terms turns into something a little bit more exciting. This is probably a really heavy slide. I think that's the heaviest I have. But these are all the steps that you can take to optimize that keyword list. So what most people that I see, that I talk to actually do, is they take all the keywords that they can think of and just put them into that text box. And it's limited to 100 characters, so you run out of space really quickly. Maybe you get 4 search terms in, you're like, I don't understand this, but whatever. It's just magical. It isn't really that magical. So there are steps that you can take from having those keywords from the research phase and bringing them in. And that is, you don't need to have repetition. That doesn't really help you. You don't need to have full words, full search terms. You just need to have words. No spaces, no quotes also, and no pluralization. The one that most people ask me about is should they have their category name in the keyword list? And the answer is no. Apple looks at all those. So Apple knows your app name, and they already use it outside of you having to specify it. They know your company name, and they know where you're actually listed because you told them this in a different place of App Store Connect. And so all those things together, if you do all of this, you're going to end up with a ton of space that you can use for even more keywords. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. The other two things that are extremely important is one, use all 100 characters. It's definitely not easy. It's a little bit challenging. If you get close, that's probably still okay. But try your best to get all the keywords that you can. And one thing that I find just very intuitive is simplify complicated keywords. No one is going to type a keyword into the App Store that's super long. No one thinks that way. And the attention spans are so short that no one is going to take the time to actually completely do it. Autocomplete might kick in and help you, but it probably wouldn't. So all the keywords that are kind of complicated should be simplified, should be made more basic, because you want to attract more people. So what does all of this mean? I know it sounds pretty technical. Let's look at a real example. So this is a real example from an app that allows you or helps you buy sneakers online. And so this on the left is the first set of keywords that they had in the list. I believe it's 60-something characters long, so they're only using about 60% of the keyword list. And if you count them, there's just a handful of keywords in here. There's a lot of repetition. And when Apple sees this, they're not really optimizing for all these keywords on the right. So we're not helping Apple see that they do free shipping. We don't help Apple see that they do more than just sneakers and all these other things. And so what we did was we followed all the steps from the previous slide. We took away all the spaces. We took away all the duplication. We depluralized all the words. We removed all the quotes. And that gave us all this. So all of that on the left side translated into kind of the first line and a half on the right side. So we saved a ton of space. And then we were able to inject all these new keywords like accessories and boots and sandals and free shipping men, women. So a lot more opportunities to get found on the App Store. And because the algorithm will automatically handle all these keyword combinations, they're not just going to look, Apple's not just going to look at these keywords and say, okay, we're going to rank them for the word cool. Instead, they're going to rank for all the combinations that come out of all of these keywords together. So shoes and shop shoes. Boots and shop boots. You're going to get all these for free, technically. And so this is exactly 100 characters. That's something I really enjoy doing, finding exactly 100 characters. You don't have to do it on your own. It's really irrelevant. Even if you go for 90 or high 80s. But as long as you really take advantage of all of those. There's some advanced techniques to how to get around and squeeze even more into this. I'm not going to get into them. If you're curious and you really want to do this, find me afterwards. So that was the keyword list. Number one, if you do anything today, just go back to your hotel room and really think about that keyword list. Because if you change it, when you upload your next build, within, I want to say 3 days, you're going to see really good results. But that's not enough, so we're going to continue. Next up, we have the app's name. And the app's name is the second most important thing that Apple looks at. It's also what users use to decide if they want to even look at this app. So the most important thing you can do is take the keywords that you think are most important for the app, and by that I mean the keywords with the highest popularity, and put them in your app's name. Now, the order is extremely important. It's only 30 characters, which is really not that many, but there's a difference between the keyword being in the beginning of the string and the end of the string. A lot of companies start with their company name and then the keywords, and we'll look at examples in a second. But if you don't have that popular of a brand, and I know it's the kind of thing that's really tough to think about, but if you're being realistic, if people are not looking for your app by name, by company name, put your keywords in the beginning and add your company name at the end. When you become really known and really popular for your brand, then move it to the front. And that's actually going to give you a lot more juice than you think. One little thing is I see people still try to keyword stuff like it's 2015. It's pretty disgusting, so don't do it. Think about it this way. People are going to see this. And when they try to make that decision of whether to tap this one or the next one, if it looks really ugly and kind of unprofessional, they're just going to skip it. So some examples. I took a few examples of apps that everyone knows, and I looked at what they did. So Postmates says food delivery right in the name. All these brands are kind of famous, I want to say, and popular. So they start with their company name and then the keyword. And they inject it in slightly different ways. Postmates separates it with a dash. Waze kind of has a sentence that makes sense, but they pack a lot of keywords into the name. Navigation, live, and traffic. Spotify has music and discover, both are really important keywords. And Venmo has money sent and receive. And that allows them to rank really, really well. So food delivery, Postmates is number 3 right now. Live traffic, Waze is number 1. Kind of makes sense. Spotify is number 6 for music. Music is very popular on the App Store. And Venmo is number 3 for send money. So they indicate to Apple that these are the most important keywords, and this is where Apple should put them really as high as possible. The next thing is very similar to the title, and that's the app subtitle. Now, how many of you actually use your subtitle? Because it's optional. Not everyone. This is a problem. Go and fix that too tonight. Have a subtitle. So the subtitle is another great place to put keywords because if you remember from the list, it's the 3rd most important thing out of 3. And so use keywords from your original research in here. And just like we said before, with the keyword list where Apple makes combinations, the same thing will happen here between your subtitle and your name. So what I like to do is I like to use keyword modifiers. In the previous example, we saw food delivery. We can augment that with the types of foods. So we can say pizza, beer, something else. And that will tell Apple that beyond just food delivery, we want to be ranked for a combination of keywords. Now, unlike the name, this doesn't have to be grammatically correct. You can just have a bunch of keywords separated by a dash or a comma or something else. If it's not pretty, try to make it pretty. I think it's really important that it looks professional. That would be my take. It gets a little bit challenging, but if you can do it, don't. If you can, go for it. It won't hurt if it's grammatically correct. It won't hurt if it isn't. And then, just like the keyword list, use all 30 characters because unlike the name where you don't have a lot of flexibility if you want to make it sound good, here, if it's just a list of keywords, it doesn't. So put as many keywords that would help, again, indicate to Apple, this is where you really should place my app because the users that see it would get the most benefit. Now, your visuals. So the visuals help once we get all of our keywords right and once we're at the top of all the keywords that we want to be, and Apple knows it, and people find us, they get to our page. Now, our page can turn them off really quickly. If I don't see what I want to see, if I'm not engaged, if I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I would just leave, because swiping back takes a split second, and there's so many options, especially if your app is paid, because you probably have so many free competitors. They might suck and be terrible and steal all of the user's data, but the user doesn't know that ahead of time. So we have a few things that we can use, a few tricks up our sleeve that we can use to make our page better. We can mess around with our screenshots. They're big, they're kind of in your face, and that's what most people look at almost immediately. That's what I look at immediately when I go to see an app, and I assume a bunch of you do the same thing. We potentially have a video, and we have an icon. I know icons might not seem important, but I'll show you why they are. So I like to say sell with your screenshots because when someone just sees the app, providing that the name kind of makes sense and it is relevant, they're going to look for why should I get this? What's in this for me? Is it going to answer my question? Is it going to solve my problem? Is it going to help me? So I call this sell. I put quotes on it because it doesn't really do any sort of real selling. It just conveys the message that you have. And let's see how to do that. So a good screenshot shows off the best possible features that you have immediately. It doesn't make you guess, and it's not the features that you as a developer think are the best, because they may not be. It's what you know your users want to see. And this goes back to the research and your keywords. If we know that users are searching for a specific keyword, that's their intent. And so if we can take that and show the part of the app that focuses on that intent, that's how we make sure that they stay on the page and don't go away. I think that using color to represent screenshots is a great way to kind of capture that attention. Some people just use their UI, and the problem is it's kind of vague. I've never seen your app before. If I'm just looking at the UI, how do I know what's going on? I can guess, sure, and I may, other people might, but realistically, most people won't. So if you use some sort of a background that is colorful, that really highlights the app itself, it will capture their attention even more quickly. I also like using captions, very, very short captions, but the kind of captions that tell me what's in the app and what's in the screenshot that I'm looking at. So if I'm looking at a very complicated screenshot and I have 3 words to describe it, we solve the whole problem of me as a user not knowing what the hell's going on. And instead, now I understand what's going on, I can spend the time thinking, is this really the app for me? And if you do that for all of your screenshots, you can really create a journey so the user can see all the features and all the benefits that they can get out of it. And lastly, and this is a really interesting one that came from a lot of testing and not necessarily just, it's not as intuitive. When you show your app in action and when you show humans interacting with it, when people see people in screenshots, they convert better. This is the result of many, many, many A/B tests by many, many, many companies. And all of them have shown that if you use any sort of a human hand holding a phone or a person using the app in real time, that's what gets people that connection, that engagement, and keeps them on the page as opposed to having them leave. So I got a couple of apps that I think do a really good job doing this. Spotify is one of them. Spotify uses color in the background, and the colors they chose, whether you like them or not, they still show off the UI. The UI is black, so almost everything would contrast with it. And they picked colors that would highlight it, bring it to the forefront. They also use really, really simple captions. And so you know you're going to discover, you know there's some artists, and you know their podcasts, which is to them what's most important. So find the things that are most important for you, and if you did the research step right, they should come right from that research step and put them in your screenshots, because that's what, again, people are coming into the app to find. They're coming into the app to discover music. And if that was their keyword, that was their search term and intent, if you carry that throughout your name, your subtitle, and also your screenshots, you're really getting them in, and they understand this is the app for me. But your UI might not be always as interesting as is the case with Jump by Uber. Jump is the app that you can use to get those scooters outside and those bikes. So there's nothing really that exciting about an app that's basically a map and a pay button. But instead what they did was they took that last thing that I had in the slide before, where they show people using the app, and they're showing kind of what the app can give you and connecting that with us. Now, that app is specifically used in different ways. You don't really come to the App Store to find a ride-sharing app, but you really find a scooter outside. But at the same time, they still took the time to make that app engaging, because when you're out there looking for a scooter, you may just be curious about it. You may not need a scooter at the moment or a bike. And so by capturing their attention and by getting people to really engage with it, they're kind of making sure that you're going to get that scooter, whether you need it or not, whether it's just, what is this? Let me check it out. And so that's why keywords are really informing how you use your screenshots, and everything connects together. So mistakes, and I've seen a lot of mistakes with screenshots, especially this week. I'm only showing the app's UI. Again, if I'm just looking at a screenshot from the app, I may not understand what that is supposed to do or what that is supposed to give me. There's no indication. Another interesting thing is if you sort the app by the way people use the app, and you think that's a great idea, right? They start in the beginning, they end at the end. That may not be a great idea, because sometimes there might need to be steps that you take in order to get started with the app that you don't think about before you download it. And if you put it up front, I'm going to be really confused. Why do I have to upload all my information before I can use this thing? Why do I have to upload a video of my face before I can use this thing? Now, it's possible that once they download the app, they're going to hate the idea. Don't show it on the App Store. Definitely don't tell them this is what's going to happen. Tell them, here's what you're going to get. Prime them for the benefit, because it's worth uploading your face if you know you're going to get something great out of it. Another thing that I see is a lot of text. So when I said text, I didn't mean essays or paragraphs. I meant 2 or 3 or 4 words. How many of you have text on your screenshots right now? How many of you have a ton of text? Change that quick. And then this is one of the things that annoys me the most, is capturing really boring UI. So if your app has any data involved in it, whether it's analytics data or some sort of a chart or a map or anything like that, if you're just using your demo data because you don't want to use real data, the one problem you're going to run into is that when someone looks at it, they can't really associate themselves with it. They don't feel they're engaged. So if our analytics app is showing 3 downloads a day, you're going to look at it and be like, I don't know if this is for me. But if it shows 100 downloads a day, that might be better. So when you're coming up with your demo data for the app, make sure that it's exciting and interesting and all the charts look good, if that's the case. I'm going to run through the rest a little bit more quickly because I don't have any time. And I still want to take questions, which may or may not happen. But videos. How many of you use a video in your app? 1. Yes. Okay, so talk to Joe after. He'll tell you why it's so important. But the app review video is, Apple made it so that it could be super simple. It could just be a screen capture of your app in action. Take advantage of that. Show people how your app is so simple and how it's so amazing and why you need it. They need it. You also need it because you made it. There are so many different ways to go about capturing a video, and I believe there's a talk tomorrow specifically about capturing video for app reviews. I would highly recommend going to see it. It's not that difficult. Really isn't. Now, it can get a little bit tricky because you might want to go a little bit beyond just what you show in the video, just the app, and you might want to add some captions, and you might want to add some colors and title cards, and you can. And if you have the ability, you definitely should, because at the end of the day, everything that's on the App Store is something people kind of rely on to decide, should I get this app? But the key is, you don't have to do any of that. All you really have to begin with is showing your app in action. Find what users use most, and again, go back to those keywords that led them into the app in the first place. And once you understand that, show them exactly what it would take to achieve that goal, whatever that goal is. Mistakes with app reviews is not having an app preview. Apple gives you 3 of them. You don't have to take advantage of all 3. You should, but you don't have to. At least do 1. 1 is a good starting point. Another easy one is use sound. You can grab any sort of soundbite from the internet, and for a few bucks, it will make your video come to life. Just do it. It's really easy to do. You can put that together with iMovie. Really, really easy. You don't have to be a video editor. If you focus your video on activities that are too complicated, they're probably not too complicated for you. You know exactly how to use your app. But if they're not highlighting in a very short amount of time what it is that I'm going to get out of it, it's not going to be useful for me. And then the last one is you can select what would happen when someone isn't playing the video. It's called the poster image. And so you can use that as another screenshot for your app and yet another way to get more engagement. Icon. So a lot of people say, I don't really care about my icon. I kind of just found something online, I used it. And the icon is unimportant. It's not important to me at all. But it is important because it's the first thing people see even before they get to your App Store page. So if your icon is confusing, if it doesn't really say what the app does, if it looks a little bit complicated or kind of weird, people are just going to completely forget about the app and move on. And again, because there's just so much competition, they're going to swipe onto another app and not even see any of those optimizations. So your keyword optimization was just a waste of time, and all the work you did on that video is, again, a waste of time. And when it comes to optimization, this is almost it. I know I'm running out of time, but I have 2 more things. So the last thing that I want to talk about, is monitoring. Oops. You got to see 4, and we're going to see all of them together. So by monitoring, I mean look at what's happening for your app on the App Store. Look at your keyword ranks to find out if all those changes you made are actually doing anything. They could be hurting. Your downloads could be going down because you optimized for the wrong keyword, or you optimized for a keyword you don't have the right performance to actually break into. And that's a problem, and you want to undo that quickly. Monitor to see what your competitors are doing and if it's working for them. So just seeing what they're doing is one thing, which keywords they're using, but seeing if it's giving them any lift is another really important thing. Now, if you monitor, you can also continue to make sure that the keywords you're using are the right ones to optimize for. Whether it's looking at popularity and how that changes over time, because that can happen. And if popularity really decreases for a keyword, you want to change it. That happens often with seasonal keywords. So one of the apps we helped with ASO last week at our meetup was SeatGeek, which does tickets to events. And they told us that they changed their keyword list with every season. So baseball is in season right now, but it won't be in a little bit of time. And how they change that really helps them remain relevant. And so it's really important to monitor and see how that changes over time. And also, Apple sometimes breaks the algorithm. And they do that, and it's really, really bad. And let me give you an example. A few months ago, this screenshot showed up in a blog post online. Do you see what's wrong with this? Who sees what's wrong with this? Yell. Okay, no. Downloads have dropped. So an app called Happy Scale, by doing nothing, lost almost a half of its money, a half of its downloads. That's kind of insane. If that's the app you use to pay your rent, to pay your mortgage, you don't want that to happen. And what ended up happening is Apple made a change to how they consider the subtitle. And he didn't know about this, the guy behind this. It was really nice. And it just happened. So he saw his downloads go down, but he had no idea why. And then later, when he started investigating, he understood that it had to do with his keywords. So if he had monitored his keywords, he would have known that within a few hours of this happening, he would have known that something had happened. And then he would be able to react to it a lot more quickly, hopefully before this continues. And we don't even know how much worse this can become because he didn't share any of those screenshots, but it could have become a lot worse. He actually wrote a whole blog post on everything, which I linked to. It's a very interesting read. So what to monitor? Monitor your keyword ranks, obviously. Monitor your App Store impressions. Apple gives you that data. We give you that data. It's really easy. And the App Store impressions are the number of times people see your app in the store. Either your App Store page, your listing in search results, your listing in a category where you're featured, all those together. But all those really translate to how well your ASO is doing. So if you're making changes and the impressions are not going up, you know you have to do something else. If you're making changes and they're going down, you're in trouble. So really undo everything. Don't even think about it. Also, monitor your downloads, obviously, because impressions lead to downloads. So if your downloads are going down like that particular case, change something. Go back to what you were doing before, or make another change. And lastly, your page conversion. So how are you going to know if those screenshots really had any impact? You're going to take your downloads and you're going to divide them by the App Store page views. The App Store page views are not the impressions, are the number of times that your page was actually viewed. So people made it all the way to the page, and how many of them actually downloaded the app. If that number is low, you know that something is wrong. Maybe your description is turning them off. Maybe your video is making them run for the hills. Maybe your screenshots are not really describing what the app is all about, and then you know you're in trouble. And that's why you need to monitor it. But bonus, last one is experimenting. This is optional. This is not something you have to do. This is a little bit more advanced in my opinion. But I hear a lot of people say, I am not disciplined about experimenting. So I do something once and that's kind of it, and I don't look at my numbers. And the problem with that is, again, it might just hurt you, and you wouldn't know. So the way I see it is you don't have to be disciplined about your experiments. You don't have to think about it as experiments. You have an idea, give it a try. Uploading an app to App Store Connect is not very difficult these days. Experiment with your keywords, and if you do that, use the keywords in the list, the name, and the subtitle all together, because they all work together. So if you just do one of them, it's good, but it's not great. Do all three together. No, I'm saying that if you make the change, make sure that the set really is used across. So if you completely changed a set of keywords in the list itself, also make sure that the name somehow ties into it, and that those keywords play well off of each other. And then try new ideas with your icon. Again, if people see something interesting, they'll tap on it. If they see something that isn't, they're not. And you can change that all the time. Apple doesn't really give us the tools to test this in a really scientific way. Doesn't really matter. You can just upload a build with one set, and then a month later, upload another build with a different set, and compare the metrics. Because the data changes so quickly, normally within hours, sometimes days, less than a week. In most cases, you will know. So you don't have to stick around for too long. And of course, when you do this, always keep tabs on all the metrics from before. If any of those changes is lowering the amount of impressions, downloads, or your conversion rate, make changes. It's always okay to undo your changes. It's not a failure if you tried something and it didn't work. It's okay. And that's it. That's all I got. If you need help, please ask me. I'm here. I like beer. But you can find me online too.